You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We know that Syracuse football is in the quarterback market. Unfortunately, Kyle McCord, he was amazing for us in his one season with Syracuse. And yeah, he still has a bowl game if he chooses to play in the bowl game. He's got a future in the NFL, so either way, I don't blame him. But he's not coming back next year. He can't. He's out of college eligibility. That means that Syracuse football needs a quarterback. We have already talked about at length that they need to go in the portal to get one. And in my opinion, it could be Kaidon Salter. Kaidon Salter is 6'1". He's 195 pounds, and he was the quarterback at Liberty, the full-time starter over the last 2 seasons. He is a dual threat quarterback, which I will explain later on in this segment. And he's got 1 year of eligibility left. So I know I already have said that my preference is 2+ years just to have the certainty, but I would rather a 1-year transfer quarterback than start the season with an in-house option. So I'm okay with a 1-year transfer just like Kyle McCord was. Now, there's got to be a reason why I'm bringing up Kaidon Salter, because he is actually one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks available, and I think a lot of teams are going to want him. So the reason why I'm bringing him up for Syracuse is because On3, which is a major recruiting site, has linked Syracuse and Salter together. Now, that doesn't mean whether or not that Syracuse has expressed interest. Doesn't mean that. But if On3, a major recruiting site, is linking those two together as a possibility, that means there's got to be something. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be some sort of conversation. I don't know what from which side, though. Just want to be very clear, but that's why I'm bringing up Kaidon Salter. He is a legitimate rumor. He has been connected to Syracuse via On3. So, what is it about Kaidon Salter, okay? What should you know about him? Should he, tomorrow when the transfer portal opens, decide, I want to play for Syracuse, I don't want to wait for anything, I'm going to sign on day one, okay? Here's what you need to know. Basically, a tale of 2 seasons. 2023, absolutely spectacular. He was the Conference USA MVP for the season. In 14 games, Salter threw for nearly 3,000 yards, 32 passing touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. A 32-6 touchdown to interception ratio. I call that pretty good. What do you think? That's pretty good. 32-6. That's even better than what Kyle McCord was. And he also had a completion rate at 61%, which is not great, but if you're a dual threat quarterback, just get above the 60 line, which is exactly what he is, because Kaidon Salter in 2023 ran for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. So 32 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns. That means Kaidon Salter in 2023 had 44 combined touchdowns in 14 games. You do the math. That's over 3 a game. He's pretty good, guys. That was 2023, and he led Liberty to a 13-0 record. In fact, if we're talking about the current college football playoff format and not last year's, the 14 playoff, I believe that Liberty would have made it. I believe they would have been the Group of 5 conference champion representative. You can correct me if I'm wrong, though, but I'm pretty sure it would have been Liberty at 13-0. However, they did lose the Fiesta Bowl game to Oregon for what it's worth, so they finished 13-1. I don't think we're going to hold that against Kaidon Salter or Liberty for losing to Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. But then 2024 happens this past season, and there was regression. There was. And the question here is, why was there regression? Is there an excuse? Is this a red flag that we should take seriously? Because it is a red flag that he regressed from 2023 to 2024, but we have to understand why the red flag occurred. Now, before I get to that answer, I'll tell you what his numbers were. He played 11 games, so not 14, but still okay. What did he do in those 11 games? Well, he threw for 1,900 yards, which is less per game than in 2023. So less passing yards per game. 15 touchdowns in 11 games. Not terrible. And 6 interceptions. So still not mistake prone, but his completion rate dropped to 56%. That's not very good. You want to be at least at 60% as a dual threat. And if you're not a dual threat, then you're looking at 64, 65, 66%. He was at 56 as a dual threat. Not very good at all. He ran for less than 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. He actually averaged 2 touchdowns total per game, which is not bad, but not the obscene total he had the year before. And so I did some digging and I tried to find what was the reason for this? What was it with Kaidon Salter? Was it maybe a coaching change? Nope. It wasn't a coaching change. He had the same head coach. He had the same offensive coordinators. They have 2 offensive coordinators at Liberty. And he had the same passing game coordinator. So, to my knowledge, based on the fact that there was nothing changing with the coaching, there was no schematical change here that led to regression. But there was a change in personnel, a big change in personnel. And that is the fact that his top receiver from 2023, CJ Daniels, he transferred in the offseason to LSU. CJ Daniels at Liberty in 2023 had over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He had more than double the catches and the yards than the next highest Liberty pass catcher. He was the dominant number 1 target for Kaidon Salter, CJ Daniels. And for what it's worth, by the way, Daniels had 1 season at LSU last year, and he's back in the transfer portal. Hint, hint, that's coming up later on in the show. I think it could be a good idea to pair the 2 up together. That's all I'm going to say about that. When a team like Liberty loses a top talent, they can't just go into the well and they'll be fine. Right? We got to be honest. I'm not disrespecting Liberty, but there is a difference when you're a team like, I know we hate the SEC and everything, but when Georgia loses a player, their guy waiting in the wings the following season is probably going to be pretty good too. Same thing with a team like Bama or a team like Texas. You get all of that. When Liberty loses a player, when they lose a 1,000-yard receiver, they're not getting elite high school recruits. They're not getting elite transfer portal guys. So it's very difficult for them to replace a number 1 wide receiver like Daniels, like CJ Daniels. It's hard to do it for them. And they didn't. They didn't replace him one bit. In fact, all they really did was try to promote from within, which obviously hurts. So I think that's really why Kaidon Salter's numbers took a dip from 2023 to 2024. Is it a red flag? It is. Is it a guarantee that if he were to come to Syracuse that he would regain the form of 2023? It's not a guarantee. But I'd be willing to bet that if you gave him a little bit more around him, he could be a lot better than he was last season. And he still, for what it's worth, wasn't terrible. He had a low completion percentage, but he averaged over 2 touchdowns a game, and he was still a dual threat guy. So that's a little bit about Kaidon Salter, the Liberty quarterback who has been connected to Syracuse via On3. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you want Kaidon Salter as the next quarterback of Syracuse football? He's got 1 more year of eligibility, and he's a dual threat quarterback.